Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the MTN Momo Developer Hackathon webinar. My name is Raees. I work with MTN in the product and strategy team. And today the aim is to walk you through the hackathon, where we are, the idea phase, the different phases, any question and answers that you may have, and then we'll close it. The hackathon will be available. The webinar will be available online and will be posted on the discussion forum or on the hackathon portal. And if you look on the webinar tool, there's a text box there or a chat box where you can post your questions and answers. And when we have the question and answer session, we will respond to your questions there. On the panel, we've got Dhruv, who's from HackerEarth, Ruth, who's at our MTN Ghana team, John Mark, who's at our MTN Uganda team and is a technical lead on this, myself, and we have Cedric, who's the head of Fintech product and strategy at MTN Group.
Good morning, everyone. I am Cedric Nguessan. I'm heading product and strategy for MTN Fintech at group level. And I first wish to thank everyone for making the time to participate to this hackathon and to this event. As MTN, we are very, very excited about the opportunity to be working with you all. So I would like just to give a little step back on mobile money. So mobile money is live in 14 countries. And today we have 80 million users across all these countries. And the Open API platform is very central to our strategy, because what we believe is, as we provide consumer with possibility to pay online, it is also an infrastructure and a catalyst to a fast and digital inclusion. And we recognize as MTN that we won't be able to solve all the use case, to digitize all the payment use case, or even a transactional scenario that needs to happen in the market, in your respective market, for digital payment to grow. And so the vision behind the Open API is to work with you all in creating this opportunity for yourself. So we see ourselves as a platform. We have a brand, we have millions of customers, but we want to offer you all, developers and entrepreneurs, the opportunity to leverage this platform and create business for yourself. The hackathon, this hackathon is the first of a series, we hope, that will come more often. We are going to open more countries over the next few months, and so there will be more nationalities, we hope, will participate. And we are very excited to take this first step and this first relation we create with you beyond this hackathon, again, in working together in fastening digital and financial inclusion across your respective market and across the continent. So I wish to thank you all again for your time. I wish you good luck for the hackathon and for the competition. And we hope to provide clarity on the details of this very hackathon so that it can be a success for all of us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cedric. So again, just to go through the agenda, the next point will be the talk through the idea phase by Dhruv from HackerEarth. Then we'll move on to the prototype phase and how the judging and requirements will work. A technical chat with John Mark and what would be expected from the prototype phase. We'll go through the questions that you post in the chat and respond to them. That will be myself, Dhruv and team, and John Mark and Ruth, who will answer your questions, and then we'll close the webinar. So Dhruv, I'm going to hand over to you now, if you can take us through the idea phase. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Raees. Thank you, Cedric. Firstly, I'd like to thank all the participants who have taken part in this hackathon. And so as we all know, the ideation phase is underway, where all of you participants are coming in and submitting your ideas of how you would like to implement the MTN Momo APIs. What I have prepared here is a short presentation of how the ideas will be evaluated by our subject matter experts here at HackerEarth. So let me quickly jump into it. So we have three main criteria that we use to evaluate the ideas that are being submitted. The first one is the concept of the idea. As you can see on the slide, the concept entitles the novelty and innovativeness of the idea, relevance of pain points that the idea addresses. So here, our evaluations will be based upon how new the idea is in terms of an idea like this already being implemented. So the scores would be assigned based on if the idea is something that is known or is popular, is already in the market, the idea may receive a smaller score. Or if the idea is new to the world, it'll score a higher score. So think of something innovative, think of something that has not been done before, and this would help your idea score better. The second criteria that we use to evaluate the ideas is the impact that the idea has the potential to impact the world. So here again, in this particular criteria, we have practical usability and potential of the application that you are developing, how viable it is on a global scale, and how relevant it is to the current scenario of technology. So the things that we look for here is the scoring would be done based on how well the idea can be adopted. If the problem being addressed by the idea is incorrect or is irrelevant, you may score a smaller score. But if the idea has significant impact on the masses, you will be able to score a much higher score from our evaluations. Also, a mediocre score would be given to ideas that do give an impact, but maybe to a niche audience. So that is with the second criteria, that is impact. The last criteria is complexity. Today, an important thing that innovators and technology innovators have to understand is how viable an idea to build technology is. So when it comes to this criteria, we look at the scalability and overall difficulty of implementing the technology being proposed, and how easy is the solution to the world to understand and implement, and how long it will take for them to implement the idea. So when it comes to complexity, we would like to see how scalable your idea is, how difficult is it to implement, the technology that we would require to implement this idea, is it viable, is it available today, or is it something that requires further work or inventing, and how well will it work with the world today in terms of a general citizen of the world using the particular idea. So these are the three main criteria that we use for the evaluations from our end. Once we finish these evaluations, MTN group will actually shortlist 12 ideas from each country. So thank you so much. This is from the idea perspective and how we will evaluate the ideas being submitted. Over to you, Raees.
Great. Thank you so much, Ruth. I think that was great. Hopefully that has clarified how the judging for your ideas would work and how you would be scored. I'll now hand over to Ruth, who will talk you through the judging, the prototype phase, the judging, and what the requirements that we need from yourselves, the developers. So once again, it will be the top 12 ideas that will be selected per country that would be invited to the prototype phase that Ruth will take you through now. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Raees. So as indicated, the entries are now coming in from the different stakeholders who are submitting their interest. So by the 1st of December, we will stop taking in the entries. So at that point, we would now go through selection process where we will select the top 12 as Raees indicated, and then we will invite you, we would announce to you on the HackerEarth portal and also email you if you are successful or you are part of the top 12. And once that has been done, we would call you for an in-country workshop. The proposed date is in the week of the 9th December upwards. So there will be an in-country workshop where you would have the opportunity to engage some OPCO members who have information on how our APIs work and how developments are done. You also have an opportunity to ask all the questions and interact with the people who matter as far as the entire process is concerned. So those workshops will happen for 2 days in all the OPCOs that are participating. And then we will give you the chance to go and develop your prototype. So you will have a period from that point until the 20th of January to develop your prototype. So by the time we end the prototype phase, you're expected to have submitted a prototype or an APK on the HackerEarth website. So once you submit it and we close the submissions, there will be a date that is set for the OPCO event, the judging event itself. So during that period, there will be 2 days for that process. And during that process, you have to come in person to actually explain your idea and your prototype or your application to the judges. And as indicated by Dhruv, the criteria that will be used for judging was made clear earlier. So those criteria will be run through your application, and then the top 3 winners will be selected. And as has been communicated earlier, the prizes that will be given to the top 3 are 2,500 each for all the 3 groups or different individuals. And then the winner, who is the first out of the 12, will win a trip to Sweden. And it has to be one individual if you're a team. But if you are an individual, then the individual actually goes to the group events that will happen in Sweden. So in a nutshell, that's what the judging process is going to look like. So I'll hand over back to Raees.
Great. Thank you so much, Ruth. So as you can see, we will take it from I think it is 1,370 registered participants for the hackathon. We've had, I think, 188 ideas thus far. That would be reduced to 12 top ideas per country, and then the top 3 of the 12 will be selected to move as prize winners. I'm going to hand over to John Mark now, who will just talk you through some of the technical aspects and what is expected from the prototypes that you provide.
Thank you, everyone, for joining and being part of this journey of the MTN Momo Hackathon. It's a very noble cause for which we expect that the results are going to drive innovation within our African continent, and more importantly, to drive financial inclusion. So as part of the program, we expect that your teams are going to be diving a lot in some tech spec. So what I'm presenting is just a few highlights that you should have in consideration when you are doing APIs. So first, what's an API? You definitely should have already read something about it, but there are 2 keywords about an API that you should be aware of in our own space. One of the words is that an API delivers functionality that has what you call accepted inputs and outputs. So this is very simplistic view of what you're going to do. There is functionality that we're delivering as mobile money, which functionality has been formatted in a format which allows particular inputs and outputs. So everything that you're going through within our portal, which is a Momo developer portal where you're testing our APIs, you have a format of an API which gives you inputs and outputs that you'd be expecting. That's in a very nutshell. The APIs that we are looking at here and the solutions that you're going to develop will be cross-cutting. So the image that I've put out here is just to show that an API is at the center of so many different tools and technologies. You have a car, you have a TV, you have a phone, you have a game. All of these can be integrated together with an API. Now, even in our space where we are doing a payment service, you could do a solution within the Hackathon program, which solution can be tailored to a car, a wearable device like for health, a mobile application. It could be anything else, but it would still need elements of payment, which payment could be delivered with our API. That's the high-level concept about the API. Then on the next slide, we have just elements around three things that you should be thinking through as teams that are working on APIs. There is a design concept in technology that it's called the KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. Simple doesn't mean that it's actually simplistic and it's actually stupid, but simply to drive the idea that the best applications, the best products are those that carry simplicity in user experience, that don't have complexity in them. So as you're doing whatever you're working on, it will be very important that you carry an idea that is as clear as possible and as simple as possible to execute. Also considering that you have a very limited time frame in which you're going to do this. So importantly, the product ideas, the team has already given an assessment criteria, but from a technology perspective, we shall be looking out for a build of a product that embraces the themes that have been provided and Momo APIs. So you could be using APIs outside Momo for other capabilities that you may want in your application, but critically you shall be looking out for how you are using the Momo APIs. The teams that you've picked would ideally need to have some developers for front end, back end, and designers. That's just an ideal. You may not have all of them, but if it's possible, you look out for capabilities of front end and back end. Then as you're approaching these tasks, you have to bear in mind that we all don't come with the same technology capacity in hackathons. So everyone has to be honest about what they're able to do within the time frame. They don't set ambitions of an application that you actually don't deliver. Because at the end of the day, it's not more about the broader idea you had, but actually the result that you bring. Because you want something that could be working at the end of the program. Then in designing your applications, it's important that the application is simple, functional, and is logical. So this is very high level view about assessing an application that is being presented. Then in your presentations at the end of the day, we expect that you will be able to explain what your application does, what challenge it solves, what technologies have been used. So this will be a very strong point from a technology perspective. Then you should be able to clearly state what particular APIs that you've used and other platforms. So this should be demonstrable within what you would have. The next slide talks about some tools that can be used by technology teams. First, you have our APIs. Our APIs are already tools that you should be working with. When you go to our Momo developer platforms, you will find the APIs listed by products, collection, disbursement, remittance, collection widget, and sandbox user provisioning. So this is one of the primary tools you're actually working with. The APIs that are available are within our Momo developer sandbox. Then the other tools that we expect you will be working with are what you would call rapid UI prototyping tools. When you do a search on the internet, you will find quite a lot of them. I've listed just a few that can be used, and we can provide them for whoever has some queries. So, but the concept here is that because you are working within a very short period of time, you should be able to look out for tools that would enable your work be faster and also smarter in that sense. Then you have what you call the back-end technologies, which we expect once you've done your application, we expect even your presentation will be able to tell us that in your back end, you've used SQL, no SQL, you've used Azure Cloud, AWS, what are the capabilities you've used in there. So these are things that we expect would come out when you are delivering your work, your presentation. You should be able to explain the usability, and then you should be able to explain the technologies that you've used to deliver your product. Then there are the front-end technologies that you would work with. Some are very common, PhoneGap, Android, iOS. So as you're developing, we expect your application would most likely be tuned or working with one or a combination of these. And there are frameworks to work with also, like jQuery, it's a popular one. XUI is a popular framework. Of course, there'll be different frameworks also based on the back end that you are using, maybe the program languages that you are using. So this we expect in your presentation, when you come to the technology front, you should be able to explain why you chose a given technology, how you found it. It's also, we are open to whatever technologies you would want to work with. We also appreciate that the hackathon is also a discovery. You could be using a technology for the first time. You would be able to discover its strengths, its weaknesses, based on that exercise that you conduct with during the hackathon. So it's also a plus for your task. Then also equally important is security. Our API platforms and the developer portal puts forward some of the things that are needed from a security perspective. It's very important that you use the minimal security that we provide, like the TLS expectation, connect your applications to the API platform, subscription keys that we provide, the API keys. This is just the minimum. Now, over and above that, we would also expect you to be able to elaborate for your application what you've done to ensure your application is as secure as possible. You are doing an application that's doing payments. It could be doing a service in health, in education, in sports, but also embedding a payment capability. Or it could be a financial service that we're offering. So security is very important. We would appreciate once you've done your solution that you're also able to elaborate what you've done to ensure that your application is secure and its integration to the payments capabilities is as secure as possible. So in a nutshell, we expect this in your results together with the mockups, prototypes, and a working APK that can be installed somewhere and someone is able to run through your application. This is a brief that we have from a technology front. We shall be available to answer any questions that you would have. Thank you. Raees, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, John Mark. And hopefully that has clarified well, a little bit as to what would be expected when it comes to the prototype phase. Again, there will be a lot of support available to the participants of the prototype phase. We'll have resources in country supporting from the MTN technology team, as well as from our technical partner, Ericsson, who have been very pivotal in helping us get these APIs out there to the market. So we'll have representation there, as well as on the Momo developer website. Under the support section, for each country, there is a Skype and WhatsApp group where you can post your questions, your technical questions there. Over and above that, we do have the discussion forum on the portal webpage where you can post your questions there and you'll get answers from us. But again, there are lots of support channels available to reach out to us should you have any questions. So I noticed that there haven't been any questions in the chat box. So once again, if you have any questions, you can post them on the support forum, find us on Skype or WhatsApp via the Momo developer website. And yeah, we wish you all the best.
Hi, Raees. We have received a few questions on the question poll. So what I would do here is I would read the questions out and then we can decide who can take the question up.
Okay.
All right. So the first question is coming, which is, do we need to go live to submit our applications? So I'll take this question. So once your team is shortlisted, we will notify you to start working on your prototype. And while you work on the prototype, you have the option to submit all the details pertaining to your prototype on the HackerEarth platform itself, where you can submit a presentation, snapshots, source code repository links, and instructions to use. So that would be the answer to that question. Raees, I would go ahead and read questions as they come. If it's a question that I can take up, I would answer it. But otherwise, I would see if some of our panelists would be able to answer the questions as well.
Great,
So
thanks, Ruth.
Other question here. Is there a different criteria used in developing phase, or we assume the same criteria for ideation phase? That is, no matter how much points you had in the idea phase, does it accumulate to the prototype phase? Okay, thank you for this question. I would take this one up as well. So based on the idea that you have submitted, after our evaluations are done, there will be 12 teams that will be selected for the prototype building phase from each country, and only those teams would continue to work on the prototype and build it. The evaluations that are done from the idea phase are mainly to create the shortlist. They will not be carried over and considered during the final presentation of your prototype. So we have another question here. So this means my web app must be hosted and I share a link to the HackerEarth website. So yes, once you have developed the application for your prototype, it must be hosted. You can share the link on the HackerEarth website. On the platform itself, you have an option to submit links, source code, as well as repository codes, which we will be able to evaluate. Another question here. What if I already have an app and only need to integrate it with the Momo API for payment? Do I still qualify for the hackathon? Raees?
Yes, sure. So again, the first cutoff is, is your idea selected to move on to the prototype phase? Then again, should you have an existing application? It would definitely need to incorporate the mobile money, our Momo APIs. And if your application does not use our APIs, then your prototype and you will be disqualified from proceeding on to the presentation. So again, it's fine if you have an existing application, but you definitely need to use our APIs to solve a problem.
So the next question here is, I noticed that the pre-approval endpoint of the API wasn't documented in the sandbox. How can we leverage that? John, would you be able to take this question?
The pre-approval endpoint, pre-approval is an API that we have as a capability, though it's not exposed because right now the products that we're working with, collection, disbursement, and remittance, we haven't yet found the need to expose pre-approval, but there will be a roadmap during which it will be exposed. So it's a capability available, but it will be in a roadmap to be exposed.
Thank you, John. We have another question for you, John. Can a person use Flutter instead of the dev tools given in the presentation?
Yes, a person can use any tools that they are comfortable with. We are open to the teams exploring all that the technology universe can provide, as long as central to their implementation, they've done the Momo API.
Thank you, John. We have a common question here where people are asking whether does it need to be a mobile application or a web application, or can it be something other than that?
Should I answer that?
Sure, John, go ahead.
Okay. But I think it can be either mobile application or web application. Now, if it's something other than that, remember we have to assess it from what problem is it solving? How is it accessible to the people? So there is provision for another, just that it has to be elaborate on how is it accessible to the people. And like the other question, central to what other interface you provided, it should be incorporating mobile money.
Thank you, John. I received a question here which link can we use for the submission? On the hackathon page itself, after you've registered, you will see the button to submit your idea directly. Once you click on that, you will be brought to a page where you have a portion to jot down your idea, and at the same time attach some presentations or images that you would like to support your idea. So we have one more question. How do I know that our idea has been selected to go to the prototype phase? Also, what if idea not selected? Will it be fine to go ahead and work on it? So I'll take this question again. The ideas that are shortlisted will be announced on the hackathon page once the evaluation, the shortlist is created. And the teams that have been shortlisted will be asked to work on their prototypes for a final presentation for the final round with the MTN group.
So just to also add that for in-country, we would also contact the participants directly, because we need to have an interaction with them to give them a view on the next stages, i.e. the workshop and then the next phase of it, which is the main judging event. So we'll also contact them locally as well at the OPCO level.
Great, thank you, Ruth.
Just one last comment on that. I think the last question was, if the idea was not selected, can you work on your idea on your own? Absolutely. That's the role of our open API platform. It's to enable anyone and any entrepreneur and anyone with a great idea, whether it's selected or not, to build their business using MTN mobile money APIs.
Thank you, Raees. We have another question. I think this would be for John. In the event that you have decided to use an Android platform, will the APK need to be available on the Google Play Store? And also, are the participants allowed to make modifications to the Momo API methods for custom or additional capabilities, or are they only allowed to use the current API methods that you have mentioned?
Just the last bit of that question, please.
So the second part of the question was, are the participants allowed to make modifications to the Momo API methods, or that is add custom or additional capabilities, or are they only to use the current API methods that have been mentioned?
Okay, first about the APK, we do appreciate that it may not be a very smooth process for an application that is under test to be publicly available in the store. But even without that, you can always have your APK that can be installed independent of it being published in the store. So it's not mandatory that your APK will be in the Google Store. Then around the modification of the API is a standard that is published by, in this case, by MTN and Ericsson, which I said earlier, it defines the formats of expected inputs and outputs. So given that bit of context, you cannot modify the API. But you may have suggestions. We are always welcome to people's suggestions of what this API do item X, which is it's not doing now. We are welcome to those suggestions. Now, maybe the question is more driven around your application logic. The idea is that get this API with the expected inputs and outputs in the same format, then use it within your application to deliver your business logic. So you in effect not modifying the API, but you're using it to deliver an application logic.
Thank you, John. Here's another question. I think this could be addressed by any one of us. Will there be 3 overall winners per country or 3 overall winners for the entire hackathon?
So there will be 3 per country.
Thank you, Raees. So I think we can take a couple more questions before we give our closing remarks. Another question that has come here: is it allowed to create Momo WordPress plugins? So, John, would you be able to take this?
Yes, it's allowed for the community to create libraries, to create plugins. It's open. That's why I call it open API. So the community can pick on an API, and if they want to create a plugin for WordPress or a library for Java or PHP, it's open.
Thank you, John. I think so. I'd like to inform the participants that these would be the questions that will be taken for the webinar. You can always go ahead and post your questions on the Hackathon discussion forum, and we will make sure that we respond to your queries there as well. So I'd like to hand it over to Raees now for his closing remarks. Raees, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much again to everyone that's joined the webinar. We hope that it's been insightful, and hope that you are as excited as we are to host this hackathon. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the hackathon portal discussion forum, and we will definitely come back to you with an answer. And yes, wish you all the best. On the 2nd of December, the submissions for your ideas will close, and then we will announce the participants, the top 12 per country, shortly after that, with the prototype phase kicking off on the 10th of December. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists here from MTN and HackerEarth who hosted this with me, and all the best.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.